Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Coach Approach. I'm Brett Pape. That's Coach Bruce. Let's dive into the show. Coach, week 11. Let's get going. How are you this morning?
Fantastic, man. Here we go. Another week. I was just talking to the wife. I'm like, God, I can't believe there's only, 8, 9 weeks left in the season before the playoffs start. It's
Well,
going by fast, man.
if she's like my wife, she's counting down. She
Oh, for sure.
is these 3 nights a week of me hijacking the front living room is getting a little bit old for everyone else in the family. But let's get right into it. So bye weeks, we do not start anybody. This is the easiest part of the show when it comes to start and sit. If you got a team on the Indianapolis Colts, Atlanta Falcons, New England Patriots, New Orleans, don't start them. Sit them.
That's it. Show's over. Thanks for
All
tuning
right,
in.
everyone, have a great week. We'll see you Wednesday night. All right, Halo, seriously, let's jump into the rest of the slate. Sunday morning, 11 a.m. slate. If you are in Arizona, I would assume 10 a.m. if you're on the Pacific Coast time. We got the Pittsburgh Steelers 6-3 at Cleveland Browns 6-3. Interesting game. You got two teams that are right there in the mix in the AFC North, but unfortunately, neither one of them has a starting caliber type quarterback playing this week. I know that doesn't sound good if you're Pittsburgh, but Kenny Pickett has not looked good this year, which is probably going to lead me to me picking the Browns. I got the Browns winning 19-17. How do you see this one going, Coach?
Yeah, we're close on score, and it's funny. I'm glad you're the one breaking this game down because if I was me, the more I would talk about it, the more I'd probably change my pick. But I've got Steelers 16, Browns 13. I think get the upset win. I think they're 6-3. They're playing well. They're getting wins, and they probably shouldn't. So I feel like they're. But I think it's a DTR week, so it's going to be interesting to see how you break this game down. But I've got Pittsburgh winning 16-13. I'm probably going to regret that decision here in a few hours.
It's incredible when you look at what Mike Tomlin's been able to do
Yeah,
because they're being outscored, not outscored, obviously, but outgained every week. And yet they come in and somehow find a way to win every week. And it's almost like last year when you're watching Minnesota win every game last
yeah.
year, one score type of games. And these are all games that, and they could easily be 3-6 right now. But fortunately for them, they've got a guy who knows how to get them to play well, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are continuing to get wins,
Yep.
despite the fact that they aren't very good on the offense. Spread Cleveland minus 1.5, over and under 32.5. It looks like we're both on the over, but I'll tell you, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a game that's really low scoring. Again, we talked about the quarterback play already. Starting sit for Cleveland. Pittsburgh is 26th in scoring. Start sit for Pittsburgh. They're 26th in scoring with 17.7 points a game, fourth in rushing, 147 yards a game, and 28th in passing with only 156.7 yards a game. That's like a high school game it was a high school game when you and I played in high school. Now high school teams are passing.
Yeah, and keep in mind this is over the last 3 games too. This isn't season long. We're looking how are they playing right now, right?
All right. Quarterback room. Cleveland is third against quarterbacks in fantasy points per game. They've given up 9 touchdowns, but they do have 9 interceptions. So let's get to the Pittsburgh quarterback. Kenny Pickett hasn't really developed, hasn't shown anyone or hasn't shown me enough to make me feel like they're in a good position at the quarterback spot. So he's a no start, especially against one of the top defenses in the league. Running back room. Now here's where they're a little bit different. This is one of the top rushing offenses in the NFL. They've, like we've already talked about, 147 yards a game. Last week, Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris both went off. Jaylen had his first 100-yard game. Najee rushed for over 70 yards, had a score. So I feel comfortable about starting both these guys. This is very much – how many times at the beginning of the season were you telling everybody this is like Ezekiel Elliott, Pollard type room?
Yeah.
I think we can treat it like that now, and I'm feeling good about starting either one of them. Love Jaylen Warren, though. Wide receiver room, Deontay Johnson's a start for me. Cleveland is third in fantasy points per game to wide receivers, and they've given up 6 touchdowns. I'm starting Deontay Johnson. That guy, if he ever gets into the end zone on a consistent basis, he's just going to be a wide receiver 1 in the league. Right now, I think he's a pretty darn good wide receiver 2. So I'm starting him. George Pickens feels like he's a all or nothing type play. So if you start him, I get it, but I don't think he is a must start. Tight end room, we got Pat Freiermuth finally back.
Yep.
but I'm not ready to start him. Cleveland is number 1 against tight ends on the year, having only given up 2 touchdowns against tight ends. Moving over to Cleveland. Cleveland is 8th in scoring with 26.7 points a game, 3rd in rushing, and 20th in passing. Unfortunately, though, the injury to Deshaun Watson, he's out for the year. So now we get the rookie out of UCLA, out of Las Vegas High School, and that's Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Loved the way he looked during the preseason. Kind of thought that you're probably going to see PJ Walker get this opportunity, especially with Cleveland being in the playoff hunt, but they decided to go with DTR. Excited to see, because I think he is a flashy player who's very much like a point guard in basketball, but I'm not ready to start him. Running back room, we kind of very similar to what we talked about with Pittsburgh. You got 2 guys that I feel okay about starting. Jerome Ford is getting a ton of production along with a ton of work, so I'm starting him. And Kareem Hunt is not getting the same type of opportunities, but he's seeming to find a way to get in the end zones pretty consistently. So I'm okay if you start both those guys. Wide receiver room, I'm only starting Amari Cooper. It was nice last week to see Elijah Moore get in the end zone and get more work, but I don't know if this offense can handle 2 starting wide receivers in fantasy football. In tight end room, Devon Achane. Pittsburgh is 6th against tight ends, so I'm not starting Devon Achane. Anything you would change with this one, Coach?
No, I think you were spot on. I have nothing that I would do differently. I think it's Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. I think you're spot on with playing both of those guys. I think it's the same thing with the Cleveland backfield. I think you can feel comfortable, especially in deeper leagues, playing both Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt.
All right, hey, let's move on to our next game. Las Vegas Raiders 5-5 at the Miami Dolphins 6-3. I've got the Dolphins winning this one 31-17. How do you see it playing out, Coach?
So just for the folks listening, we do not share scores before we get on live and we find out who each other has picked. We don't want to sway one or the other. I've got the exact same score. I've got Dolphins 31.
No, you don't. I don't believe
Raiders 17. Yep. And I just did them this morning. I wait until the last minute and try to look to see if there's any injuries or any issues that, might hinder that. But yeah, 31-17, man. I'm right there with you. So we've got Miami covering the over and then covering the spread at -12.5. And the over at 46.5. I've got them scoring 48 combined, so I've got them just over.
Okay, I'm interested to hear your start sits in this one, especially with Devon Achane being back. So why don't we start with who we starting for Las Vegas?
So the Raiders, so they're 20th in scoring at 20 points a game. They're 11th in rushing, and they are 31st in passing. Now, this is just over the last 3 games. I like to see what we're doing recently and what the trends are. Miami's 18th in fantasy points per game allowed to the quarterbacks. They've given up 14 touchdown passes. I've only created 4 interceptions. So Aiden O'Connell, I don't like 8.9 fantasy points per game over the last 2 weeks. QB 25. His only wins are over the Jets and Giants. Not exactly offensive juggernaut. So not teams were able to put up a lot of points and force them to have to score. I think that's a little bit different this week. In the running back room, Miami's 12th in fantasy points per game to the running back room, only giving up 1 receiving touchdown on the year. But Josh Jacobs, 78% snap share, 78% rush share this season. He's the guy in that backfield. He's RB6 this week. I'm absolutely starting Josh Jacobs, who's starting to get some real momentum right now. Broke 100 yards for the first time last week. And then in the wide receiver room, Devontae Adams, he's over 30% targets per route run over the last 2 weeks and 50% targets last week. 10 targets a game or more over the last 4 games, has not scored since week 3 against Pittsburgh. Just 1 100-yard game this season, and only 2 games over 75 since week 3. I don't care. It's Devontae Adams. I'm starting him. I'm not taking him out of my lineup. So there's your start there. Jacoby Myers, less than 5 PPR fantasy points in 2 of the last 3 games. I'm not comfortable starting Jacoby Myers, but he's not a must-sit either. So it depends on your matchup and what you've got on your roster. Tight end room, Miami is 23rd in fantasy points per game with tight ends, only giving up 3 touchdowns, but they're giving up the receptions, they're giving up the yards. So in PPR formats, I don't hate Michael Meyer, but I don't think he's a must start either. On the other side of the ball for Miami Dolphins, 18th in scoring, 27th in rushing the football. Now they've had De'Von Achane back out. He is back this week. 15th in passing, first over the last few games or on the season. Quarterback room, Las Vegas, 8th in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks, giving up 11 touchdown passes. It's Tua Tagovailoa. He's got Tyreek Hill. He's got Jalen Waddle. We don't need to kill it. He's starting. Outside the 2 games against Kansas City and Philly, that dude's absolutely lighting it up. So in the running back room, we talked about De'Von Achane. I've got him at RB12 this week. In the last 3 games, He's only played in 4 this year, but in the last 3 games, he scored an average of 30.6 fantasy points per game. Yes, he had the 145-point game, but the other 2 games are close to 30. He's over 100 yards rushing in each of the last 3 games, a total of 455 yards and 5 scores. He's in your lineup. If he's healthy, I would treat him like I would Christian McCaffrey, as crazy as that sounds. If he's healthy, I'm playing him. Raheem Mostert, this is another backfield that I think can handle 2 running backs. He's got 13 total touchdowns. So you're not taking him out just because De'Von Achane's there. It's his first game back. He's explosive, but I still think Mostert has a good role this week. Wide receiver room, I'm playing Tyreek Hill. He's a wide receiver 1 on the season, 48 targets over the last 4 games. Jalen Waddle is wide receiver 11. If you have him, you're probably playing him. Don't love Jalen Waddle this week, but he's only got 1 game over 100 yards. But I feel like you got to play him. And tight end room, Durham Smythe, he had a couple decent games at the beginning of the year. He's tight end 35 on the season, no catches in 3 of the last 5 games. So we're not starting Durham Smythe.
We're not starting. We loved what he saw early on. I mean, most of it early on, we thought, here's a young kid. He's getting a lot of opportunity. He's seen a lot of target share for his position, but it just hasn't really come to fruition. And that could be simply because that offense is so loaded. There's only so many mouths you can feed. Let's get into some of these questions before we get
some
to
good
our
ones.
First one, we've got standard Kyle. Cleveland defense or Pittsburgh defense? Everyone has Cleveland ranked higher, but don't we want to target DTR? I see where you're coming with this, Kyle, but I feel like DTR and Kyle and Pickett, I should say, are pretty much the same. So I'm going to go with a higher ranked defense, and I'm going to go ahead and start Cleveland. And they're real close. For me, it's Cleveland 3 for defenses on the week and Pittsburgh's 4. So you're not really going wrong with either one, but I would still stick with the rankings and go with Cleveland. Standard scoring league, we've got running back Connor or Jerome Ford. I've got my thoughts. Do you want to make this call, Coach?
Yeah, I've got Jerome Ford in this one. As much as I like James Conner, the matchup this week, and then also they did activate, what I understand, Michael Carter. I think they brought him in to have an impact on 3rd downs and in the passing game, a little bit more explosive there. So I still like Jerome Ford as the back. I think he's more explosive overall. He's younger. He's got fresh legs. So I lean Jerome Ford in that matchup.
That's another real close one where you can go either way.
Very close.
I mean, I've got James Conner's 22 and Ford 23, so you can't really go wrong with either one of them. Let's see. Did I miss a question? I think I did. Let's go up to this one right here. Who would you start? Royce Freeman, Chuba Hubbard, Ty Chandler, Dante Foreman, or half PPR? That's a tough one, Coach. Just looking at it right there, I'm probably going Hubbard. Foreman, I'm a little concerned about. He's had practice issues this week with injuries, and it looks like we're getting Khalil Herbert back. So it would probably be Hubbard or Chandler for me, and I'm going to go with Hubbard, even though they're facing Dallas. That's a tough one. I mean, those are kind of the start-sit questions where you just kind of feel bad for the guy because they're not really good options.
Yeah, I think you're right. If I narrowed that down, I would say it's between Ty Chandler and Chuba Hubbard as well, and then I would lean Chuba Hubbard, because if it is a hole in the Dallas Cowboys defense, it's typically going to be in the run game, and Chuba Hubbard also gives you some receiving upside. Miles Sanders has almost been non-existent, so I don't trust Ty Chandler. 15 carries, 45 yards last week. Hasn't gotten a whole lot of playing time that he has earned reps, but Madison out, he gets an opportunity. I lean Chuba Hubbard just based on experience.
All right, let's go to one more before we hit our next one and our next game. And we've got Delagizi. How are you? Glad. Thank you so much for coming in. We've got Cooks versus Carolina or Ridley versus Tampa Bay. Except for Ridley's not playing Tampa Bay. Who is Jacksonville playing? I got it right here. We've only broken the game down. You think you would know this? Coach, you're not helping me. It looks like Jacksonville.
I don't have the schedule pulled up. Hold on.
It's Jacksonville versus Tennessee. So in that situation, I'm going to kind of go with Ridley. I kind of think the Brandon Cooks game could have happened, but I feel like Dallas is going to end up feeding Pollard a lot in this contest mostly just because I think they're going to jump out to pretty big league pretty early.
Yeah, it's not a great decision to have to make. I mean, yeah, you can lean on Brandon Cooks and what he did last week, but that's not been the norm. I do love the fact of trying to get him more involved in the offense, and I think if defense is really going to try to roll coverage over CeeDee Lamb with the streak he's on, you could see Brandon Cooks pop, but I think it's a totally Pollard game as well. I think Dallas gets out in front, and so I would take Ridley probably too.
We're going to go to one more question. Dan, how are you? This is my brother-in-law. Thank you for tuning in. We just spent a week last week in good old Nashville. Had a great old time. I hope he has overcome his hangover like I did. It took a few days, but I think we're probably both feeling a little bit better. Achane still questionable. Also have Mostert. Pick one. For me, Achane's the guy. He's the guy with the pop. If he was questionable, seriously questionable, they would not have taken him off IR yesterday. He's good to go. Ride Achane. You agreed with that one, Coach?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit Switzerland here and be a little neutral because I think it depends on your roster and your matchup. I think if you're looking for a must-win situation, I think Mostert gives you the safer floor. But if I'm chasing ceiling, it's Achane, and I don't think it's close. If Achane gets enough touches, I think he's the guy. So I would lean Achane because I'm typically going to try to chase the most points that I can score.
There you go. Good luck. Thanks for tuning in, Dan, and tell the family I said hi. Moving on to our next game, Chicago Bears 3-7 at Detroit Lions 7-2. I think this game's going to be a little bit closer. We got Fields coming back, but I like the Lions winning 28-22.
Yeah, I've got Lions 31, Bears 17. I went out last night. I was telling you, I went out with two other couples last night. They're both big Bears fans, and one of them was saying, I think the Bears are going to score 40 points this week, and they're going to blow the Lions out. And I sat there, and I'm like, man, I would not be surprised in a divisional game. Justin Fields is back. If the Bears, look, it's the NFL any given Sunday, but to say they're going to score 40, I think it's probably a little bit Bears fandom there.
A little bit, but I like it, and I wouldn't hate it. I would love to see another, Detroit Lion, Los Angeles Chargers game we saw last week. So if that were to happen,
for sure,
that'd be a lot of fun to watch. But let's get into the start and sits. The spread, Lions are minus 7.5, over and under 47.5. We both like the over. Starts, Chicago is 27th in scoring, 15.3 points a game, 10th in rushing at 120 yards a game, and 22nd in passing, 198.7. But Justin Fields is back, and hopefully we're going to see the Justin Fields that, early on in the year, he had some struggles, and he talked about, I just need to play more free, where I'm not overthinking, I'm just reacting. And I think that's what we're going to see. He's had a few weeks to sit and watch. I like him. If I have Justin Fields, I'm plugging him right back in the lineup. You get the passing upside with his connection to DJ Moore, and you also get his rushing upside. So I feel completely comfortable starting Justin Fields this week. The running back room, it's a little bit kind of don't know really what's going on. You've had Dante Foreman kind of struggle with injury all week at practice. You got Khalil Herbert coming off of IR, making his return. He could have come back last week. They sat him an extra week. And then you got Rashawn Johnson, who really hasn't been able to get much going so far this year. So in that order, I would start Herbert, Foreman, and I'm not starting Johnson. Yep. Wide receiver room, I'm only starting one. I'm starting DJ Moore. I do not feel comfortable starting Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney had that great rookie year, or at least a rookie year where you felt pretty good about him, and it just hasn't happened over the last year and a half. Tight end room, Cole Kmet's a must start for me. Cole Kmet is a guy who's really come on. He's got his quarterback back, so I like Cole Kmet this week. On the other side of the ball, we've got the Detroit Lions, 12th in scoring with 24.3 points a game. Kind of surprised to see that they were that far back as far as 12th, because this is an offense that
overall much higher. Just the last three games, 24.3. They've struggled a little bit over the last three.
Fifth in passing, 283 yards a game. Second in rushing, 168 yards a game. That's a great offense. Let's move on to the quarterback room. Chicago is 27th against the quarterback, so Jared Goff's a must start. We don't need to talk much about it. Running back room, I feel comfortable. I'm starting both these guys. We 100%. Saw what they did last week. So I'm starting Jahmyr Gibbs, and I'm starting David Montgomery. Jahmyr Gibbs is number 3 running back on the week for me, and David Montgomery is running back 13. Wide receiver room, I'm only starting one, and that's one of the top guys in the league. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown must start. Tight end room, Sam Laporta must start. Tennessee Titans is next. Anything you would change on there for Chicago, Detroit?
No, I think what's interesting is we talk about how there's not a whole lot of running back rooms now in the NFL. They have a legit get 70% of the rushing share, getting to the receiving down work, getting the 2-minute work. You don't see a lot of that anymore. 3 down backs, and there's a 4th team now in just 3 games. We've said we like both running backs, so Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And I agree with you 100%.
Okay, we're supposed to pick 3 here. This is Ross. Morning, Ross. Thank you for tuning in. Pick 3.5 PPR, Ken Walker, Breece Hall, Achane, James Conner. So I think James Conner is the guy that's out. So I'm starting.
I agree.
So that one was, hey, thank you, Ross, for giving one. That's pretty quick to figure out.
Appreciate it, Ross.
Let's go back to one more here from who we stashing here. If we're stashing means we are, is this redraft? If it's dynasty, kind of makes me, but I'm stashing Zach Charbonnet if it's dynasty in this one.
Yeah, Zach Charbonnet for me too. Brandon
if it's
Cooks getting up there.
Look, man, I love the fact that we've gotten a healthy Kenneth Walker all year long. Nothing makes me happier than we're not having to deal with an injury in that offense. But you kind of, you don't want to, predict an injury, but it's just been remarkable that Zach Charbonnet has not had an opportunity to have that offense all to himself. I just feel like that's something that could happen. If you've watched the way good old Pete Carroll has talked about Zach Charbonnet the last few weeks, I just feel like a breakout game's about to happen. So that's my
Charbonnet
call
for me
on that
too.
one. And let's move on to our next game. Tennessee Titans 3-6 at the Jacksonville Jaguars 6-3. Who wins? I've got the Jaguars winning 22-17. It hasn't been pretty for the Jaguars the last couple of weeks, but I think they pull this one out. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I got Jacksonville 23, Titans 16. So we're up by 1 point for each team, exact same score. So we both have the under at 39 total points at 40.5.
And we have the Titans covering.
Yep.
All right. So, who's your start and sit first for Tennessee, Coach?
Yeah, so Tennessee Titans offense over the last 3 weeks, 24th in scoring at 16.7. This is basically all 3 Will Levis games now. 19th in rushing and 21st in passing. They've had some negative game scripts, been forced to play a little bit more in the passing game. The quarterback room, Jacksonville, defensively, they're 30th in fantasy points per game allowed to quarterbacks. They've given up 14 touchdown passes, but they've also created 11 interceptions on the defensive side of the ball as that secondary is opportunistic. Will Levis, QB 21, after scoring 26.6 in the first start, he scored 9.7 and 7.0 over the last 2 games. Out on Will Levis. I'm not starting him. Running back room, Derrick Henry. The days of him being a must start we're almost getting to that point. He's RB17 coming this week, RB12 on the season, but held to just 3 points last week against Tampa Bay. 11 carries for 24 yards, did not find the end zone. We're starting to see Tajay Spears get a little bit more involved. So I don't have Derrick Henry. He's a guy that you're probably going to start, so I get that. I'm not there yet to say he's a guy that I'm sitting, but I think we need to recognize that Tajay Spears is now getting 13% of the target share, 21% targets per route run. He's getting all the 2-minute work over the last 2 weeks, 15 targets over the last 3 games. So something to monitor. Henry's still getting 68, 70% of the rush share, but Tajay Spears a little bit more involved. As far as the wide receiver room, Jacksonville's 20th in fantasy points per game allowed to wide receivers, giving up 10 touchdowns to the wide receiver position. DeAndre Hopkins has not been great this year. I do have him as a start at wide receiver 21 this week. Exploded for 34.8 in Levis's first start, but over the last 2 games, he scored 10.5 and 5.7. But opportunity, 20 targets in the last 2 games. I think they continue to try to target him and get him involved. So I'll start D-Hop. Kyle Phillips, I'm out. Nick Westbrook-Ikine, I'm out. Tight end room, Chig Okonkwo. Look, Jacksonville's 28th in fantasy points per game allowed to tight ends. They've only given up 3 touchdowns, ton of yards, and a ton of receptions. But Okonkwo's tight end 27 on the season, 16% target share. This is where people have to understand target share. 16% target share for tight end doesn't sound bad until you couple that with he only averages 7 yards per reception, and Tennessee is 25th in total targets to the tight end position. So he's getting 16% of a very low target share. Right. So I'm out on Chig Okonkwo. Other side of the ball with Jacksonville, 22nd in scoring, 18 points a game, 22nd in rushing, at almost 100 yards a game, and 19th in passing. Quarterback room, Tennessee's 12th in fantasy points per game allowed to the quarterback position, giving up 10 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. Trevor Lawrence is not a start for me. He's tight end QB 15 this week, which put him in that high QB2 area, but he's QB 18 on the season. He's yet to break 20 points in a game this year. He's scored only 4.1 last week in 2 games against San Francisco and Kansas City. No touchdown passes, 2 interceptions, and he's only thrown more than 1 touchdown twice this season, has no games with 3 touchdowns or more. So I'm out on Trevor Lawrence until I see him start to have some of those boom games. Running back room, Travis Etienne, he's RB4. He gets all the work, 79% snap share, 71% rush share. I'm all over Travis Etienne still. And wide receiver room, Christian Kirk. Very, very rough first game of the year, but he's wide receiver 18 on the season, double-digit scoring in 7 of the last 9 games. I'm very comfortable starting Christian Kirk. Calvin Ridley is not a must-start for me. He's at the low-end RB or wide receiver 2 area, high wide receiver 3, 43 in PPR formats, only 5 games of 7 points or less. So I don't trust Calvin Ridley. The tight end room, Evan Ingram, Tennessee's second in fantasy points per game allowed to tight ends, have not given up a touchdown yet. But Evan Ingram continues week in and week out, gets 7 or more targets. He's done that 8 consecutive games, at least 5 grabs in 6 of those games. He's a safe play, not likely to find the end zone. But he's going to give you the receptions, and he's going to give you a little bit of yardage. So he's not a must start, but he's not a must sit either. If you have him, you're probably playing him.
All right, I like it. And that Jacksonville offense has been very disappointing in fantasy this year. I was so high on guys like Ridley, guys like all of them, Kirk, and it just kind of hasn't happened, and it's been kind of disappointing, and you kind of expected a lot more. Let's get into some more questions before we get into breaking down my team, the Green Bay Packers. But let's go. Matt has Kincaid or Laporta. I've got Laporta as the number 3 wide receiver this week and Kincaid the number 5. So you're talking about 2 guys. You got a great decision to make, but it's Laporta for me. And then let's move on. And you agree, Coach? I mean, they're both right there.
I'm right there. I've got Laporta at 5, Kincaid at 6. I like the better matchup with Detroit playing Chicago, so I'll take Laporta there.
And then how about Murray or Fields? It's Murray for me. What about you, Coach?
Murray or I'm going Murray too.
All right, let's go to Cap for life. Henderson, Quentin Johnson, or JSN. JSN is interesting. He's kind of had a nice little uptick over the last few weeks, and we don't know exactly what's happening with Tyler Lockett. Yep. He was able to kind of run on. He had a hamstring that popped a little bit this week. What are your thoughts here, Coach? And you're kind of looking at Henderson. I don't like Quentin Johnson. He did show a little more last week, and you had some issues with Keenan Allen. But what are your thoughts on this one? This one's a tough one.
Yeah, for me, it's Darrell Henderson. And I say that because, yes, JSN's starting to get more of the route participation. He's starting to get a little bit more of the target share. But Darrell Henderson, to me, is the clear this week RB1 in that offense. I think the Rams will get into that breakdown, so I'll get into that a little bit more. But I like Darrell Henderson this week just for opportunities and touches.
Okay, we're comparing 2 running backs and a wide receiver here, Coach, for Dan. We've got Singletary, James Cook, or Ayuk. Just on the eyeball test, I love what you saw from Singletary last week, 150 yards rushing against Cincinnati Bengals. James Cook, I don't like his matchup going against the Jets, and I love Brandon Ayuk. So for me, I'm probably going Brandon Ayuk. What do you think?
Yeah, to me, it's Ayuk, and I wouldn't even think twice about it. As good as Singletary played last week, you still trust the history of him, and he's not a guy that can do that on a consistent basis. James Cook could have had 3 fumbles last week, and now you got Fournette, you got Latavius Murray in the mix there. So to me, Ayuk is the safe play there.
All right, let's go to Cam. We've got Nico Collins, Jordan Addison, or Jaylen Warren. We do not have. We kind of all hope that we were going to get the best wide receiver back in the league this week, and Justin Jefferson. It looks like they're going to wait another week. So I'm going Addison. What do you think here?
Yeah, I'm going Addison too. And I know we talked about Nico Collins. I believe Cam asked a question in the last show too about Nico Collins and what that target share is going to look like with him coming back with Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz. And would he resume that kind of wide receiver 1 on the show? I had mentioned I still believe he's that wide receiver 1 in that offense. When you take a deeper dive, Tank Dell's numbers are pretty impressive over the last few weeks. I still like Nico Collins. I still think he's going to be the guy there, especially in the red zone. But I'm going Jordan Addison. I'm with you.
Nico, I don't know if that offense is going to have Noah Brown today. And so look, those are pretty good problems to have right there at the flex spot. If I had a Collins, an Addison, or a Warren, so all 3 of them.
We like all 3 this week. That's the problem, right?
I do. So that's a good problem to have. Let's go on to Los Angeles Chargers, 4-5 at the Green Bay Packers, 3-6. This might be the first time I don't pick the Packers to win this year. I got the Chargers winning 28-24. I don't know if I'm trying a little reverse psychology, but I hope this plays out because as a Los Angeles guy, I'm looking for Brandon Staley to have to pack his bags at some point. And so I'd like the Packers to win. I just think the Chargers are going to win. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, unfortunately, I've got Chargers 23, Packers 21. So those of you that are hoping Brandon Staley gets kicked to the curb, by the way, I'm one of them. I know Cam is certainly one of them. I think everybody that's a Chargers fan, you bring in a defensive coach and your defense is your biggest problem. It's probably not a good recipe for success down the road. But I've got the Chargers winning 23-21.
All right, let's go into start and sit first for the Chargers. Chargers are fourth in scoring at 31 points a game, 28th in rushing, 78.7 yards a game, and 14th in passing with 242 yards a game. Quarterback room, Green Bay is second in points per game to quarterbacks. I like Justin Herbert, though. I'm starting Justin Herbert. Running back room, Austin Eckler. You'd like to see him get a little more usage in the running game, but I love Eckler. And then the wide receiver room, Keenan Allen kind of got banged up last week, but they say he's playing. If he's playing, that guy, man, you got to play him. Future Hall of Famer, in my opinion.
Yep.
So I feel good about Keenan Allen. I'm not starting Quentin Johnson. I hope that we continue to see him to develop, but I'm not ready to put him in the starting lineup. And that tight end room, it looks like Gerald Everett is out. So that leads you to Donald Parham. I'm sitting anybody in that tight end room this week. Start and sit for the other side of the ball. Green Bay Packers, 25th in scoring, 16.3 points a game. 9th in rushing for 124.7 yards a game, and 16th in passing with 228.7. Quarterback room for the Packers, Jordan Love. As much as I wanted him to be a thing, he's just not there yet. I'm not ready to start him. Running back room, I'm going to go ahead and start. I will start Aaron Jones. He gives you work in both aspects, the passing game and the rushing game. A.J. Dillon, as much like Jordan Love, as much as I wanted A.J. Dillon to be a thing, he's just not quite ready to give me confidence to start. Wide receiver room, this is where it's kind of muddy. You expected Christian Watson to lead this group. He's done virtually nothing this year after having such a great, promising last 8 games of the year last year. And then Jayden Reed. I like Jayden Reed. So if I had to pick, I feel good about playing Jayden Reed. I wish Romeo Doubs was a little bit better, aside from what he does in the mid-range. And Christian Watson, that's a tough receiving room to pick. But I'd start Jayden Reed, sit both Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson until we see more. Luke Musgrave has really started to come on as of late. I know he only got you 2 receptions last week, but he did have 63 yards. It just feels like they're trying to find ways to get more involved. And the Chargers are 30th against the tight ends, haven't given up 3 touchdowns on the year. So I like Luke Musgrave this week. You got anything you would differ with there, Coach?
Yeah, I would say this. A.J. Dillon's been a frustrating start to the season, but over the last couple of games, his average per carry, his efficiency numbers have improved. So I would not be surprised to continue to see A.J. Dillon with Aaron Jones still not, according to reports, fully healthy. So I wouldn't be surprised if A.J. Dillon has another game where he gets close to 8 to 12 carries, and if he can be efficient with those, there's an opportunity there. But this Chargers defense has been brutal this year. So you almost want to put everybody in play. But to your point, I mean, how do you pick between that wide receiver room? You got 3 guys that are kind of the same dudes.
Right.
In terms of target share and route participation, and it's a tough
This
group.
is the best way that I know how. I'm just going to and then throw a dart and see what we can come up with. All right, hey, Jim Coop, need 1 running back, 2 wide receiver, and 1 flex. For me, I mean, so he needs 4 guys out of this group. I'm going to take James Cook out and keep the other 4 guys in. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I'm definitely playing. I like Jaylen Warren over James Cook, again, because of Fournette and Latavius Murray being in the mix there and the fumbling issues last week. Thielen's has been down, but I still trust he's Bryce Young's number 1 target, and Godwin, of course, I like. Devontae Smith, I like. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
All right, Jacksonville offense has been shaking. Makes me want to put Cooks over Ridley. Who do you have in this one, Coach? Cooks or Ridley?
Yeah, I think we got the same question earlier, and the answer was Ridley, and I still would stay Ridley. Not impressed by it, but again, one game in Dallas, and of course you're playing against the Giants. And if you look at the Dallas's numbers this year against the Giants, you almost want to take those out. I want to see more from Brandon Cooks. I need to see it more on a consistent basis. And Ridley's the same thing, has not really boomed since early in the year. I don't think he scored a touchdown since week 1, but so it's a tough one. I like the talent of Brandon Cooks and Ridley, but neither one of those offenses really figure out how to get him involved. But I still lean Ridley.
Okay, next question. I need 2: Rice, Kincaid, Lockett, Ridley. If you got to make your lineup decision quickly, I would go Kincaid and Rice. I'm not sure what we're going to see with Lockett yet because, again, he did have that hamstring pop up. Ridley, we've already kind of talked about. We're not very comfortable with. And I've talked about Rashee Rice all year long. To me, he's the clear number one option in the passing game when
Big
your
week
name's
this week
not
for him, I
Travis
think.
Kelce. Say that again?
I think it's a big week for Rashee Rice this week.
I do too. So I'm going to go ahead and just say it. Rice and Kincaid for me.
Yep. Right there with
Let's go to – all right. That looks like we've hit all the questions, so we can go back to our next game, which is Arizona Cardinals 2-8 at the Houston Texans 5-4. Who wins? I'm
curious where you go with this one.
I've got Texans 27, Cardinals 24. I just feel like they're on a roll, and I like what I'm seeing from the Cardinals. I like Kyler Murray. I feel like he showed you everything you wanted to see out of Kyler Murray last week.
Yeah.
He had the same ability to kind of use his legs, and holy smokes, I'm excited if he continues to use Trey McBride like he did. But let's go ahead and get into the breakdown. I had Texans 27, Cardinals 24. What about you, Coach?
I've got Texans 29, Cardinals 20. I think offensively the Texans bring too much to the table for the Cardinals to keep up, even with Kyler Murray back.
All right, well, you got this game, so why don't you break it down for us, starting with Arizona on offense?
Yeah, so offensively they're 26th in scoring. Now, again, this is over the last 3 games. You've had Clayton Tune, you've had, a quarterback situation there. Kyler Murray finally comes back, so let's see what that looks like after a couple more games of Kyler Murray. 21st in rushing and 30th in passing. Again, Clayton Tune had 78 yards in one game. That brings that number down significantly. Quarterback room, Houston's 24th in fantasy points per game allowed to quarterbacks. They've given up only 9 touchdown passes, which is not a lot. And only created 6 interceptions. But Kyler Murray, to me, is a must start. He's QB 13 in his first start since he tore his ACL last season. That was last week, 19 to 32, 249. Did not have a passing touchdown, but what I wanted to see was he willing to run? Last time he came off an injury with the shoulder and some other things, he was kind of hesitant to really run the football. 6 carries, 33 yards, had a rushing touchdown. I'm starting Kyler Murray. Running back room, Houston's 18th in fantasy points per game to running backs. Going up 8 rushing touchdowns to 1 receiving touchdown. Again, I'm not high on James Conner this week. RB 35 last week in his first game back since week 5. Finished with 16 carries for 73 yards. Did not have any targets, but in fairness, Arizona did not target a single running back last week in that game. But he's 60% of snaps, 67% of the rush share. He's still the RB1 there. I want to see if Michael Carter gets involved. And I think if they activate him, and I haven't seen if he was or not, but reports were indicating he would be for this game. Don't expect him to get a ton of reps, but I'm concerned about James Conner long-term in terms of what he is in that passing game. Wide receiver room, Marquise Brown. I don't love him, but he's the wide receiver 23 this week, wide receiver 27 on the season. Just 10.2 total PPR points over the last 2 weeks. Houston played, but here's the thing. Houston plays the 3rd highest 2-high look. I got this from Derek Brown on Fantasy Pros. Does a great job breaking down individual players. But his numbers dip against 2-high coverage pretty significantly, especially in targets per route run and first read share. Atlanta has the 2nd highest rate of 2-high, and Brown was held to 4-1-28 last week. So same team, same type of defensive coverages. It's not bode well for Marquise Brown. I just don't know how you sit him. I think there's an opportunity with all of that information. I think there's a chance for him to really pop this week. I do think that Kyler Murray tries to get him involved. I'm not playing Michael Wilson. I'm not playing Rondale Moore. Don't feel confident with those guys. I don't think they're 2-3 deep there. I think the focus is going to be Marquise Brown, that run game, and Trey McBride at tight end. He's a tight end 2 over the last 2 weeks. 8 grabs for 131 yards last week on 9 targets with first game with Kyler Murray. And over the last 3 weeks, he's been targeted 28 times. Trey McBride, to me, is a slam dunk play. On the other side of the ball with Houston, they're 5th in scoring, 12th in rushing, and 3rd in passing with over 300 yards a game over the last 3. Arizona gives up the 21st most points to the quarterback position. They've given up 15 touchdown passes, so C.J. Stroud is a slam dunk start. Running back room, Devon Singletary. We talked about this earlier, 150 yards last week, finishes the RB3 with 20 touches. However, in the 3 games prior, he carried the rock 35 times for 114 yards, only 3.3 yards per carry. If they can get out to a lead early, that bodes well for Devon Singletary. So I think you got to play him just because he's going to get that 20 touches, I think, this week. Tank Dell, I'm starting him at wide receiver 17, wide receiver 4 over the last 2 weeks. And then Nico Collins, I'm starting him if he's playing, which he is, with Noah Brown out. Tank Dell, I feel to me like Tank Dell's is it's going to be interesting, I think, based on matchups, based on coverages, who they're going to use. Is it more the vertical game of Tank Dell? Is it more that intermediate possession type game or the red zone with Nico Collins. And then Robert Woods, I'm not starting even Noah Brown out. I think they focus on Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and then Dalton Schultz is a start for me at tight end. At tight end 9, 17 targets over the last 2 games.
That offense is a fun offense. I know we spent Wednesday.
A lot of fun.
I know we spent a lot of time talking about them on Wednesday, but another guy that you brought up that I'm really excited about it, that is Trey McBride. So many people now today are getting less and less patient when it comes to rookies because we've seen guys splash like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and McBride kind of was the second fiddle. Wasn't even really a second fiddle last year. It was pretty much all Zach Ertz, and we didn't see much of it. But to see him develop, former second-round pick out of Colorado State, just love what we've seen out of him. What really got me excited about him is the rapport that he built right away with Murray. So definitely excited about both those tight ends and Schultz and McBride. Before we move on to the Dallas Cowboys and Carolina Panthers, first and foremost, I can't believe you gave me that game. Usually, just so you guys know, Wednesday nights I put together the script. Sundays, Coach puts together the script. And it's never been before where I've been able to break down a Dallas Cowboy game. So
let me explain.
Thank you for giving me that opportunity. Of course, it's against the 1-8 Carolina Panthers, but continue.
2 reasons. One, it's very simple. I plucked the week 11 NFL schedule online, and I put them in the exact order that shows it. And typically, every other week, I will rotate who has the first game, and then it kind of goes from there. And so It just happened to fall that, you got the Cowboys. I try. It'd be nice to say, hey, I'll take the Cowboys, you take San Francisco every week. But I think it's fun for me to hear how somebody else breaks down the Dallas Cowboys. So I kind of like the fact that you have it this week.
All right. Well, before we get into that, let's get into a real hard-pressing question. I spent a lot of time in this when I read it. This is again from my brother-in-law, and this is a question from my sister-in-law. Will Taylor be wearing an Eagles or jersey or Chiefs jersey at the game, or a hybrid? I'll tell you this right now. If Taylor comes on with anything other than a Chief jersey, that might be the end of Kelsey Taylor. So it's definitely going to be a Chiefs jersey. Thank you so much for tuning in, Amy. Please keep bringing those tough questions. All right, next one. We've got a quarterback decision, Murray or Fields. I think we had this one earlier.
Yep.
I took Murray until I see Fields, but I like both those guys. You, Coach, different?
I like both too. Obviously, you get the rushing upside, but I still think Kyler Murray right now is the guy that I would take. We've seen what he is last week, so we have a snapshot. Fields is coming right back off the injury, so I'm going to trust the guy that I've seen play recently. I'm going to go Kyler Murray. And we got a question from you or from Todd to you, Coach. I feel like this is a former player of yours, so why don't you answer this one, Coach? Nope, Todd McMillan, actually former Chicago Bear, played with Peanut Tillman and Urlacher and those guys. So
nice.
He's a very humble guy, so he never really would want to talk about it. But we call him Runway. He's a model, man. He's a guy that walks in the room and everybody looks at. So we love him. One of my favorite guys, man. He does ask this question all week because he's funny because he keeps flip flopping. But for me, I'm still going to. The concern is Jared Goff to me has the better matchup. The question is, if they get out big with Chicago and they start to lean on David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, is Goff going to be the guy versus Dobbs, Minnesota seems to be in it every week, and so Dobbs has to play and play well throughout 4 quarters. And so I get the concern. I'm still going to play the higher rated guy in Jared Goff. We'll get to that game here in a little bit, but I'm still going to lean Jared Goff, but I understand the hesitancy and the need to want to play Joshua Dobbs.
Jared Goff, number 9 quarterback on the week for me. Dobbs, number 14. So, they're both pretty good options. So
you probably need to hear it from you so you get another opinion besides mine.
Well, I try and take decisions. Listen, here's exactly what I do. When I tried to be smart and make decisions based off of my gut or my heart or whatever it may be, didn't always work out well. So I'm strictly by the numbers guy. So it is Goff for me. Let's go to one more before we get to the next game, and that's Singletary, Swift, or Thielen at flex. For me, it's probably Swift. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, it's Swift for me. We talked about Singletary. We've talked about Thielen a little bit. To me, it's Swift. I think it's a good matchup this week. Yes, I get Kansas City that's playing better lately, but I still think Swift's going to have a big impact on the game today. All
right, hey, let's move on to your Dallas Cowboys, 6-3 at the Carolina Panthers, 1-8. I've got the Cowboys winning 30-13. How about you?
Yeah, I got Cowboys 32, Carolina 17.
Okay, spread Carolina plus 10.5. So we both like the Dallas to cover, and over and under is 41.5. And it looks like we both have that as the over. Dallas Cowboys, number one in scoring at 38.3 points a game in the last 3 weeks, 14th in rushing, 114.3 yards a game, and first in passing with 363.3. Quarterback room, Carolina is seventh in fantasy points per quarterbacks. But Dak Prescott's playing is good. If you're a Dallas fan like you are, you've got to be really excited about how he is playing. So Dak Prescott's a must start. Tony Pollard, I know everyone has talked about disappointed in how he has not really shown much. My thoughts are, and if it's not the game, then you really got to look at the possibility that he just isn't healthy. He's not fully recovered from, he did break a leg pretty late in the year. So I don't know what it is, but Tony Pollard's a must start. Not ready to put any, Rico, he did great last week. I think he had 75-yard rushing and a limited opportunity, but I'm not starting him. Wide receiver 2 on the week is CeeDee Lamb. He's definitely must start the way. What has he got? 3 straight 150-yard games?
Yeah, he's played pretty well lately. He's at 3 straight games of 10+ catches and of 150+ yards, which is an NFL record.
And then wide receiver 43 on the week, Brandon Cooks. For me, he's a sit, but I get it with all the buys. He's certainly someone that you can play. And Jake Ferguson. A lot of people thought that Shoemaker out of Michigan would kind of take the role a little bit more than Ferguson. You lost Dalton Schultz last year. Ferguson, a second-year player. He's looked really good. For me, he's a start.
Yep.
Moving on to Carolina, 28th in scoring, 13.7 points a game, 31st in rushing, and 27th in passing. This offense has just been utterly bad. You got Frank Wright coming back to say he will take over the game calling. We'll see if that helps at all. But Bryce Young, he's a sit. A real kind of disappointed with his development so far. Really, really disappointed with the running back room. Dallas is 7th against running backs, but both Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders the last few weeks have really struggled. I'm not playing either one of them unless I have to. Wide receiver room, Dallas is number 2 in the league against wide receivers. But I feel pretty good about Adam Thielen. I think when we saw Frank Reich calling the offense earlier in the year, it was just simply let's do whatever we can to help Bryce Young and feed Adam Thielen as much as possible. So I feel good about starting Adam Thielen, wide receiver 20 on the week. I'm not starting Jonathan Mingo. And the tight end room, Hayden Hurst out with a concussion. Tommy Tremble, tight end 29, but I'm not starting him as well. Anything you would differ on this one, Coach?
Nope, I like it. I like it all. Right. I think it's a little frustrating with Miles Sanders. Honestly, I'm a little frustrated with Jonathan Mingo. I mean, the rookie, I felt like he was going to have a bigger impact and a bigger role in this offense. So,
I think when it comes down to it, it's more of an offense problem than a Jonathan Mingo problem. And until they can figure out, until Bryce starts playing with a little more confidence back there, I don't feel comfortable with any of those receivers. All right, New York Giants 2-8 at the Washington Commanders 4-6. I like the Commanders here. I like them winning 24-17. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I've got Commanders 23, Giants 16. So we're right there. So the Commanders, I've got them. Washington's favored by 9.5. I don't have them covering simply because it's a divisional game. These games with Washington, New York tend to be a little bit closer than, let's say, a Dallas, New York, or a Philadelphia, New York. So I feel like it might be a little bit of a closer game. And I think we both got the over. It looks like, or I'm half a point on the. No, I'm on the over. Yeah, I've got 39.
We're both on the over. Yep. Start for New York, Coach.
So for New York, 31st in scoring, only 11 points a game over the last 3 with Tommy DeVito at the helm. 5th in rushing. They're trying to get that rushing game going, take the ball out of Tommy's hand from having to make decisions, and score, of course, 32nd in passing yards. Believe it or not, it's 68.7 yards passing over the last 3 games. So it's been abysmal. Washington is 32nd in fantasy points per game given up to quarterbacks. Have given up 21 touchdown passes, only had 6 interceptions. Almost any other quarterback in the league, it's probably a must-start situation. With Tommy DeVito, it is not. He's got 10.8 fantasy points over the last 3 games, average, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. If you can't see something in him in this game, you're not going to see something in him ever. And so this is that game where if Tommy wants to have some sort of an opportunity to build off of the opportunity to start some games, this is going to have to be that game. But running back room, Washington's 15th in fantasy points per game allowed to running backs. Have only given up 7 total touchdowns. But Saquon Barkley over RB19 over the last 3 games. The volume is there in both the run and pass game. 4 or more targets and 3 or more grabs in 6 of 7 games. 65 carries over the last 3. I'm starting Barkley, pure volume. Wide receiver room, I don't trust anybody. Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt, you name anybody you want in that passing game. I don't trust any of them. Wan'Dale, 6 grabs for 41 and a tutty over the last 2. I'm only 11 targets for Darius Slayton. If there's one guy that I would start, it'd be Darius Slayton. It'd be the one guy that I would feel comfortable if I had to put something and play a deep format. Tight end room, Daniel Bellinger, 6 targets, 5 grabs for 77 yards over the last 2 games. Only games this season with more than 1 target and 1 grab. So I'm not starting Daniel Bellinger. Other side of the ball for the Commanders, they are 9th in scoring over the last 3 games, 23rd in rushing, and 2nd in passing at 328 yards a game. Giants are giving up to 15th in fantasy points to quarterbacks. That number is a lot worse over the last 3. These are season long in terms of the defensive grades. Sam Howell, QB3 on the season. Anybody have that on their bingo card? 40 or more pass attempts.
In passing yards.
Yeah, 3 straight games over 300 yards, 8 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions over the last 3 games. So Sam Howell is a must start. He is now a QB1 week in and week out, it seems like. Running back room, Brian Robinson. Look, he's RB9 on the season. Surprising 6 grabs on 6 targets last week for 119 yards on a score. The season stats, he's 4.9 yards per carry. That was a problem last year. Early in the season this year was the efficiency with the carries, but his average yards per carry is starting to improve, and he's got 20 grabs on the year and 3 receiving touchdowns. So I like Brian Robinson and the volume he's getting there. Antonio Gibson is doubtful with the toe. I don't trust Chris Rodriguez as the backup. Could get an opportunity if this game gets out of hand. Obviously not comfortable starting him. Wide receiver room, Giants are 29th in fantasy points per game allowed. They're going up 10 touchdowns to the wide receiver position. I'm all in on Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson is starting to play a little bit better. Had a couple down games. He's wide receiver 21 on the season, but he's got double-digit scoring in 7 of 9 games. So, Jahan Dotson in weeks 8 and 9 was wide receiver 4, but just 2 targets last week. I think we get back to seeing a little bit more targets this week. I'm not afraid to start Jahan Dotson in this matchup. I think there's going to be some opportunities for him to be relevant. Curtis Samuel, I'm out on. Only 10 grabs for 53 yards in the last 3 games. Logan Thomas. Giants are 4th in fantasy points per game allowed to tight ends, only 2 touchdowns, and the 8th lowest in receiving yards per game to tight end. So it's not a great matchup for Logan Thomas. I think the game could get out of hand. So I'm not starting Logan Thomas, even though he's the tight end 10.
I like it. Let's move on. Wait, we got a question for you, Coach. Blake Nelson, Coach, DK Metcalf, Rachaad White, or Mostert. Please pick 2 of those guys, Coach.
Pick 2. So I'm going to take Rachaad White, Raheem Mostert. I don't think it's a great matchup for Rachaad White, but he's just a guy that gets you 20 touches a week. He's relevant in the passing game. He took one, I think it was 58 yards to the house for a touchdown. So I like his involvement there, even though the matchup isn't great. And then Raheem Mostert. Yes, Devon Achane is back. Both of us are extremely high on him, but there's still an opportunity. I think Mostert's can find the end zone. He gives you enough there to score some points. I just don't trust Geno Smith and Seattle Seahawks passing game right now. So DK Metcalf had a great matchup a couple weeks ago, or it was last week, playing a team plays a lot of man coverage when he excels, and he dropped a dud. So I don't trust DK Metcalf, even though he's a wide receiver 1 in that offense. So give me the opportunity. Give me the opportunity to get in the end zone for him, Mostert, and the opportunity to pass the game for Rachaad White. Those are my 2.
You're going with volume there, and I like it. I think that's the right call for both those guys. Let's go move on. Tampa Bay 4-5 at San Francisco 6-3. I got the 49ers winning 30-17. Spread is San Francisco minus 11.5, so I definitely have San Francisco covering. And over and under is 41.5. I have the over as well. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I got 49ers 29, Tampa Bay 13. I think Niners run away. It could be worse, but it also could be one of those games that Niners get out in front. Tampa Bay has been competitive. Tampa Bay is a good football team. I just think that San Francisco right now, what we saw with that defense last week with Chase Young in the mix, I think the 49ers are pissed off after losing 3 straight, and I think they're going to be pissed off the rest of the year.
Okay, let's get in the start and sit first for Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is 10th in scoring, 25 points a game, 29th in rushing, 78.7, and 13th in passing with 246. Baker Mayfield, he's facing the 5th best defense against quarterbacks. He's played really well for what most people expected to see out of Baker Mayfield, but I'm not okay playing him. He's 20th quarterback on the week. So I'd sit Baker, running back room, for the reasons that he's not very efficient, but Rachaad White just keeps getting the ball handed off to him. So I'm starting Rachaad White. Receiving room, Mike Evans is a start. Chris Godwin, I feel good about starting, even though we are playing the San Francisco 49ers. But that's all I'm doing. I'm not starting anybody else on that Tampa Bay. I'm not starting Kate Otten. For the other side of the ball, San Francisco 14th in scoring, 22.7 points a game, 16th in rushing, and 4th in passing. Quarterback room, Brock Purdy, quarterback 12 on the week, which makes him quarterback 1 for the week. So I'm starting Brock Purdy. Definitely starting Christian McCaffrey. Definitely starting Brandon Ayuk. I like Deebo Samuel. I feel like it's okay to start him. It's just pretty much I'm going down every skilled guy for San Francisco and say start. So, and that moves on with George Kittle as well. So I'm starting anyone pretty much in the red jersey unless they're the wide receiver 4 or tight end 2. And Kittle, the tight end room, Kittle, I already said it started. Anything you would change with that one, Coach?
I would just say, it's interesting. Tampa Bay's second fantasy points per game allowed to running backs have not given up a single rushing touchdown this year, and only 1 receiving. But it's Christian McCaffrey. There's not a scenario out there that I'm not playing Christian McCaffrey. But you might have some guys that are Tampa Bay fans that might say, "Hey, look, these guys don't give anything up," but the volume is there, and he gives you a lot, both the run and pass game.
Now he had his touchdown streak snap last
Yep.
week. You said that they have not given up a rushing touchdown all year long.
This is the week they do.
It'll be interesting to see if he's able to get in the end zone. Let's move on to our next game. New York Jets 4-5 at the Buffalo Bills 5-5. I think this is going to be a close one, but I like the Bills winning 20-15. Buffalo is -7. Over and under is 40. I like the under.
Yeah, we both have the under. I've got the Bills scoring a little bit more and the Jets scoring a little bit less. I got Bills 26, Jets 10. Just don't trust Zach Wilson in that offense on the other side of the ball. But as far as start and sits go, the New York Jets offense 32nd in scoring, only 10.3 per game over the last 3 games, 30th in rushing at 76.7, 18th in passing at 218.7. Buffalo's 9th in fantasy points per game allowed to quarterbacks, giving up 12 touchdown passes and have converted 8 interceptions. I'm not starting Zach Wilson. QB 26 on the season, 1 touchdown pass in the last 5 games. That's frustrating. Of course, everybody throws touchdowns against the New York Giants, and that's who we play when he got it. But revenge game for the Bills. They lost in week 1. Aaron Rodgers goes out early with the Achilles. Zach Wilson comes in and does just enough for them to get a win. I think the Bills come out pissed off. They're also not playing well. They're 5-5. I think they're 1-4 against the AFC. Starting a very tough climb to get into the playoff race. I think they bring it to the Jets this week. Breece Hall, Buffalo's 24th in fantasy points per game allowed running backs, but they have given up 6 touchdowns on the ground and 1 through the air. Breece Hall's QB 50 on the season, 20-plus points in 3 of the last 5 games. I'm playing Breece Hall. Wide receiver room, Garrett Wilson. He does have an elbow injury. Seems like he's going to be fine. 12 or more targets in 5 of the last 6. I'm playing Garrett Wilson. Alan Lazard, just 6 grabs on 17 targets for 80 yards. No scores in the last 3, so I'm not playing Alan Lazard. Tight end room, Tyler Conklin, 13 grabs on 13 targets for 136 yards over the last 2 games. So he's getting the targets, he's getting the grabs, he's been efficient. I like Tyler Conklin this week. Buffalo Bills have given up 3 touchdowns at tight end position. Starts and sits for the Bills. Bills offense is 16th in scoring, 8th in rushing at 125 yards per game, and 12th in passing. Jets defense is legit. They're giving up 6. They're 6th in fantasy points per game allowed to quarterbacks. Only 9 touchdown passes. They've also picked off opposing quarterbacks 9 times. Josh Allen is QB1 the season because of what he gives you with his legs. He is throwing touchdown passes. Ken Dorsey has been fired. Joe Brady's been brought in. We talked about that on Wednesday. Here's what's crazy. So Josh Allen's thrown at least 1 interception in 6 straight games. But does have.
I think he's only not thrown an interception in 2.
In 1, 2, correct. Yep. And he's got 2 or more touchdown passes in 6 of 10 games. So he's able to offset that a little bit with the touchdown passes. He does have a touchdown rushing in 7 of the last 8 games. So Josh Allen, you're playing.
Yeah.
Running back room, James Cook, don't love him as a start this week. He's RB 18 on the season, RB 23 this week, low end RB 2, high end RB 3, less than double digit scoring in 4 of the last 6 games. Again, I'm gonna hit over the head again. Leonard Fournette's going to get in the mix at some point, and you've still got Latavius Murray taking goal line carries. I am out on Murray and Fournette this week only because I need to see what that backfield is going to look like, so I still am not comfortable starting either one of those guys. Stephon Diggs is a start. He's wide receiver 4 on the season. Has not played great over the last 2 weeks, but I expect them to try to get him involved, even against an elite secondary like the Jets. They're number 1 in fantasy points per game to wide receivers, only giving up 1 touchdown you've got to get Diggs involved. I can't see a scenario where Diggs is not in my lineup. Gabe Davis is out. Khalil Shakur is out, meaning they're not playing for me. They're sits for me. Even though Khalil Shakur is getting more opportunity lately, I just don't think you can have more than one receiver relevant against the Jets. So if I'm going to pick one, it's going to be Stephon Diggs. Tight end room, Dalton Kincaid, 28 grabs on 32 targets for over 270 yards and 2 scores over the last 2 games. In that time, he is the tight end 2 in the NFL. I'm starting Dalton Kincaid.
God, I love watching that guy play.
Oh, I love it. It's everything we thought he was going to be, and it just took a little bit longer with Dawson Knox there. Now that Dawson Knox obviously, unfortunately got knocked out, we've gotten to see Dalton Kincaid take over the lion's share there.
All right, let's move on to our next one. Seattle Seahawks 6-3 at Los Angeles Rams 3-6. If you go back to week 1, Los Angeles Rams went up to Seattle and were able to beat them. I think the Seahawks get a little payback this week. I like the Seahawks winning 27-23. Spread, Los Angeles Rams +1, over and under is 46.5. So I've got the over and I've got the Seahawks covering. How about you, Coach?
I got the upset here. I've got Rams 26, Seahawks 24, and Matthew Stafford comes back. I think Cooper Kupp has a monster game. They get Nakua consistently in that 6, 7, 8 reception range. May not have a ton of yards, may or may not find the end zone, but I think this is a game that the Rams come in and get the upset.
I like it. Let's go. Seattle's 21st in scoring, 18.7 points a game, 25th in rushing, and 11th in passing. Quarterback room for the Seattle Seahawks, Geno Smith. He's a sit for me. He's quarterback 17 on the week, but man, I'll tell you, we saw a lot more out of him last year in year 1 as a starter for Seattle. He's kind of really struggled this year, and it's been a little bit unfortunate because I know me, I if I want to throw it out there, I predicted the Seahawks to do some big things this year, and it just hasn't come to fruition. Running back room, the Rams are 10th against running backs. You've got Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I'm starting Kenneth Walker, and I feel like it's okay to start Zach Charbonnet because I just feel like that game is going to come at some point. So I'm good with starting both of those guys. Wide receiver room, I know you said DK Metcalf, you didn't feel great about him this week, but that was when we were comparing him to somebody else. So yep. I'm going to start DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett, I'm a little bit worried about because he did pop on the injury report this week with a hamstring, and that's not something that you can kind of recover right away. So I'm not starting Tyler Lockett. And if I want to be a little spicy, I will start Jackson Smith-Njigba, especially if Lockett is out. I really like what we've seen lately from Jackson Smith-Njigba. Tight end room, I'm not starting anyone for Seattle. It looks like if you don't have a number 1 guy, you don't have a guy. And they seem just to have 2 or 3 guys that kind of pencil in each week. So I'm not starting any of their tight ends. Other side of the ball, Los Angeles Rams are 29th in scoring over the last 3 weeks, 13.3 points a game, 20th in rushing, 25th in passing. Quarterback room, Matt Stafford is back. He's 19 quarterback on the week. I feel okay if we have to start him. Would prefer if we didn't until we saw more out of him. Running back room, Darrell Henderson, running back 27 on the week. If you have to start him, I think he is the start. And Royce Freeman, I don't hate having to start him as well. He's kind of had a little more of an uptick over the last few weeks. In fact, some people have him ranked higher than Henderson on the week as far as starting. Wide receiver room, Cooper Kupp, you have to start. Puka Nacua, remember Puka Nacua started his career getting 15 targets. Now, granted, Cooper Kupp was not in that game, but Puka Nacua had a lot of success week 1 against the Rams, against the Seahawks. 10 receptions for 119 yards, so I like Puka Nacua as well. Tyler Higbee, I'm not starting. It doesn't seem like there's enough balls to go around to feed Cooper and Puka, so no Tyler Higbee for me. Anything you would change here, Coach?
No, I think what's interesting is Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. I figured out why I forgot to break down one of my games this morning. I had last minute figure that out because I actually broke this game down in addition to mine. So I ended up doing an extra game. But Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua both had 7 or more targets in every game they played this season. So whether Kupp is in the lineup or not, Nacua is seeing 7 or more targets. So, yeah, 100% there. I thought what was interesting is on DK Metcalf. The question we had earlier, I like the other 2 out of the 3 because I like the 2 running backs in that question. But he does have 9 or more targets in 3 of the last 4. And Jackson Smith-Njigba was at least 5 targets and 4 grabs in 4 of the last 5. So I do like both those guys to your point.
Okay, let's move on. Sunday Night Football. We've got Minnesota Vikings 6-4 at Denver Broncos 4-5. You got two teams that started off slow, but both are playing very well as of late. I like the Broncos winning 21-20. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I've got this as a close game too. I'm going to take Minnesota 26, Denver Broncos 19. Would not be surprised if Denver wins this game. It's at home. Russell Wilson's playing better. I think Sean Payton's trying to get his offense kind of see what his vision is, and so I would not be surprised to see Denver. But I'm going to ride the Joshua Dobbs train and what Minnesota's doing and trying to make a push and get into the playoffs. So, and then you get, you don't get Justin Jefferson this week, but you get him next week. So, we want to get to Julio's question before I go through start and sit.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of a tough one, but I'm going with Saquon based on volume.
Yeah, I'm going Saquon too. He's the only guy in that offense that's fantasy relevant. The terrible wide receiver room. It's not a great tight end room. You're going to try to get Saquon as many touches as you can. So I'll take Saquon.
All right, let's go ahead and get into your start and sits in that Sunday game, Coach.
So let's talk about Minnesota's offense. So 6th in scoring over the last 3 games. A lot of that's Joshua Dobbs in the last 2. 15th in rushing and 9th in passing. Denver is 26 in fantasy points per game allowed to the quarterbacks. Obviously, you have the big Miami game earlier in the year where they put up 700 plus yards, so it does skew the numbers a little bit. But they have given up 17 touchdown passes to the quarterback position. Joshua Dobbs is QB3 over the last 2 games, averaging 33.6 fantasy points per game. That's going back to 1 game with Arizona, the last 2 with Minnesota. He's completing 67% of his passes over that time. So I like Joshua Dobbs this week. Running back room, Denver's 32nd in fantasy points per game allowed the running backs. Again, skewed by the Miami game when both Mostert and Achane went off. But Ty Chandler, Alexander Madison has a concussion, not likely to play this week. Looks like he is out. Was not very efficient with only 3 yards to carry last week. We did find the end zone against a very tough New Orleans Saints run defense. I like Ty Chandler this week as a start, even at RB31. I'm okay putting him in my lineup. Wide receiver room, Denver's 13th in fantasy points per game to wide receivers, giving up 9 touchdowns to the position. Justin Jefferson, unfortunately, is out. Was hoping he was playing this week. He is not. So Jordan Addison, to me, becomes a must start as the wide receiver one in that offense. 7 or more targets in 4 straight games with 5 touchdowns over the last 6. KJ Osborne is a sit for me, wide receiver 70 this week. And then tight end room, TJ Hawkinson has now surpassed Travis Kelce. He is a tight end 1 on the season in total fantasy points. 58 targets, 35 grabs, 377 yards, and 2 touchdowns over the last 4 games. Kevin O'Connell is getting him involved, getting involved early and often, and Joshua Dobbs is smart, understands who to get the football to. So I love him. On the other side of the ball with the Denver Broncos, 15th in scoring. They've improved. They're averaging 22.3 points a game over the last 3. They're getting the run game going with Javonte Williams, 140 yards over the last 3 games. 29th in passing because they haven't had to pass to be competitive and win football games. So I think that's more just we don't have to pass the football as much. Quarterback room, Minnesota's 16th in fantasy points per game allowed to quarterbacks. I'm starting Russell Wilson this week. He's QB 16 on the week. He's a potential low QB1 upside to me, mid QB2. 3 straight wins. That's against Buffalo, Kansas City, and Green Bay. These are teams that are supposed to have very good defenses and potentially, especially for Buffalo and Kansas City, potential Super Bowl type teams early in the season. So I like Russell Wilson, what he's doing and how he's playing lately. 6 touchdowns, no interceptions over the last few games. Running back room, Minnesota's 8th in fantasy points per game allowed the running backs, only giving up 5 total touchdowns to that position. But I like Javonte Williams, 55 touches over the last 2 games, 48 carries and 7 grabs. I'm all over Javonte Williams this week. And then wide receiver room, the only wide receiver I trust is Cortland Sutton. He scored in 4 straight games. And then Jerry Jeudy, just 9 targets and 5 grabs for 85 yards and 1 touchdown over the last 2 games. So I'm out on Jerry Jeudy. But I get it if you're playing him based on who you have and bye week. So I don't have him as a must sit, but I don't have him as a must start. Marvin Mims, he's the 3rd wide receiver there. They can't figure that dude out. 3 targets, 1 grab over the last 3 weeks, and no yards on that 1 grab. So tight end room, Adam Trautman has not had more than 2 targets in the last 4 games. So I'm out on Adam Trautman and the whole tight end room on that offense.
All right, we got one more game to go, but before we get into it, let's look at Ryan. Ryan wants to know Scary Terry or James Cook. This is without me even looking, just based off of matchups. I like Scary Terry. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, I like Scary Terry. You can't deny Sam Howell and the way the offense is playing, and that starts with Scary Terry in the receiving game. So I'll trust that over James Cook this week.
Okay, let's get into probably one of the best Monday Night Football games we've had in a while. That's Philadelphia Eagles 8-1 at the Kansas City Chiefs 7-2. It's a rematch of last year's Super Bowl, and a lot of people think it's a a preview of what we're going to see in this year's Super Bowl. And I like Kansas City winning at home 26-23 over Philadelphia. How about you, Coach?
Man, we're so close. I got Kansas City 24, Philadelphia 23. It's only 2-point difference on Kansas City. I got Kansas City pulling out the win.
All right, Kansas City's a minus 2.5 favorite. Over and under is 45.5. We both have the over. Let's get in the start and sit. Let's go. Philadelphia Eagles, third in scoring, 32.3 points a game, 24th in rushing, 10th in passing. KC is fourth against quarterbacks on the year, which is pretty darn good. But I don't care. I got to start Jalen Hurts. I'm sure everyone's starting Jalen Hurts. So we can move on. Running back room, we've already talked about what we like in DeAndre Swift. So we're starting him. He's running back 7 on the week. And the wide receiver room, I'm starting both A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Tight end, they're down to Jake Stoll. That's an easy sit for me. I didn't even know he was in the league. But best of luck to Jake this week. I just don't want to play him. Moving on to Kansas City. Kansas City 19th in scoring, which sounds kind of weird. It's been their offense that everyone's talked about over the last 6 years, and now it's more their defense. They're 19th in scoring, 20.3 points a game, 32nd in rushing, 74 points a game, and 6th in passing. Quarterback room, it's Patrick Mahomes. We're definitely going to start him. I'm starting Isaiah Pacheco, and I'm starting Rashee Rice. He's the only receiver I feel comfortable starting. I'm starting him. I've said it so many times. Sometime I'm going to have to be right. One day we're going to get a 120-yard, 2-touchdown type game from Rashee Rice. I hope it's this week. Tight end room, Travis Kelce, you're definitely starting him. Anything you want to change on that, Coach?
I'm with you on Rashee Rice. I think it's a boom week for him. I like it. I don't like Isaiah Pacheco this week, only because I think Philadelphia's first in fantasy points allowed to running backs, only giving up 2 touchdowns on the year. I don't think they target the running back position as much as I would like, even though Isaiah Pacheco has taken over kind of that role. I think Jet McKinnon. I think this is the first game we see a little bit more of Jet McKinnon. I don't know why I called a hunch. Kind of feel like that might happen this week, but we'll see. But I love the Rashee Rice call out, man. We've been waiting for him to have that big boom game, and
through 1 week we got it right?
That's it, man.
Hey, everyone who came in, thank you so much. You turned a 37-minute show into an hour and a half, 11-minute show. Appreciate it. We love when we get to interact with you guys. Wish you nothing but the best. Coach says it every week. Please reach out to Coach Bruce 122 on Twitter or at Brett L. Pape on Twitter if you have any questions. We've got a whole hour and 20 minutes before game starts, so we can answer any more questions that you have through Twitter. Appreciate you all. We'll be here Wednesday only this week. Thanksgiving week. Coach is traveling, so no show Saturday or Sunday next week. So we'll be on Wednesday with pretty much – Wednesday is going to be more of a real quick news and injuries, and then we're getting start and sit for every game. So we plan on having a pretty long show on Wednesday. You good with that, Coach?
Yep, we are. We're good with it.
All right. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day, and we will see you Wednesday.